Chosen one. This is the stillness before your movement. Heaven has drawn a circle around your steps and whispered, "Not yet." You feel it every door that resists, every plan that fades halfway, every silence that lingers longer than your patience. But this is not punishment. It is preservation. You are not frozen. You are being held. Heaven pauses you so your spirit can mature into the strength that your destiny will demand. What looks like delay is actually the mercy of divine timing. There was once a young man named Asel. He had fire in his heart and vision in his hands. He prayed for doors to open, jobs, ministry, relationships, but nothing seemed to move. The world told him he was falling behind. That time was leaving him. He almost believed them. Then one night, while sitting alone beneath a flickering street lamp, a quiet voice spoke deep within him. "If you rush now, you'll arrive where I never sent you." From that moment, he stopped chasing speed and started learning stillness. Chosen one. You may be in your own street lamp night right now. The silence is heavy. The unanswered prayers sting. But heaven's delay is the training ground for discernment. The Spirit is teaching you how to move by signal, not impulse, how to trust the unseen hand that guides without noise. It is written in the Book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 25 to 26. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. That verse is not an old echo, it is a living instruction. It tells you that stillness is not weakness, it is wisdom. The quiet is not empty, it is full of divine activity. Every hidden conversation, every unseen alignment, every silent answer is being arranged behind the veil. Imagine yourself as an arrow resting in the hand of an archer. The string is pulled back, not to restrain you, but to build the force that will launch you further. You feel tension now, but it is the tension of precision. When heaven releases you, you will move farther in one motion than most do, in years of striving. In this pause, heaven measures your motives. Are you waiting because you trust, or because you have no choice? Are you still because you obey, or because you're too weary to try again? Heaven refines both. There is no wasted delay when you are chosen. Think of Moses, 40 years in the wilderness, holding a staff that would one day split the sea. Think of David, tending sheep long before he faced Goliath. The waiting seasons of the chosen are always classrooms of preparation. You are being trained in invisibility so you can carry visibility without pride. You might look around and see others running ahead, doors swinging open, voices rising, applause growing. But heaven often hides its greatest warriors until the moment darkness underestimates them. Don't envy the speed of others. Protect the depth of your own becoming. Asa, that same young man, learned to wake up each morning and whisper, "Not my clock, but yours, Lord." In time, the job he once begged for no longer mattered. A new calling found him, instead one that carried weight, peace, and divine confirmation. When heaven finally said, "Move," everything that once resisted opened in a single day. Your moment will come the same way, suddenly, unmistakably, divinely aligned. But until it does, stay anchored in stillness. You are not late. You are right on heaven's schedule. If your heart recognizes this truth, take a quiet step of faith, like share, or subscribe so that more chosen ones walking through the same silence can find this light. And if you feel heaven stirring something within you right now, comment 777 below as a sign that you are choosing to wait with faith until heaven sends the next signal. When you learn to rest inside the silence, you begin to hear what motion once drowned out, the subtle heartbeat of heaven. Every pause becomes a classroom of awareness. Every delay, a whisper of divine correction. You start to notice signs, not in lightning, but in the gentle rhythm of your own breath. Stillness sharpens your hearing. You realize that heaven's timing is not measured by minutes, but by maturity. What God is shaping inside you takes longer than what people expect from you. So stop apologizing for your pace. It's not slow, it's sacred. When the next sign comes, you will know. It won't arrive with confusion, but with peace. And in that moment, you'll understand why you had to wait this long. You have wondered why every step forward feels like an invisible hand pulls you back. Every time you think, now it will happen, the moment collapses. What you cannot yet see is that this hand, the hand of restraint, is not the enemy's opposition, but heaven's protection. It guards what your eyes are not yet trained to see. You think the delay means denial, but heaven sometimes hides you to save you. The unseen hand covers you, like a parent steadying a child before they walk into traffic. You are being protected from doors that look right, but lead wrong. From opportunities that shine like gold, but burn like fire. There was once a woman named Marielle. She was gifted, wise, and ready, or so she believed. A door opened, one that looked like her destiny, a new city, a new stage, a promise of purpose. She prayed once, felt excitement, and moved quickly. For a time, everything looked bright, but slowly, the light began to fade. The people she trusted began to show their masks, and she found herself surrounded by deceit, disguised as destiny. Only when she fell to her knees in that strange city did she realize God had tried to stop her before she ever boarded the plane. You may not realize how many traps heaven has already blocked on your behalf. Every time a plan collapsed, a battle you never knew was being won. The unseen hand is not punishment, it is preservation. When you belong to heaven, you don't move by opportunity, you move by instruction. What seems like restraint is heaven's strategy to prepare your arrival. Because once the next door opens, there will be no room for trial runs. The step will be final, the season irreversible. Heaven must be certain you are ready to carry what's ahead without breaking under the weight of it. The unseen hand of God is like wind against an arrow. You can't see it, but it changes your trajectory. It's the small voice that tells you wait when everything looks perfect. It's the sudden discomfort that pulls you from paths that glitter falsely, as revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. This direction is rarely loud. Sometimes it comes as a gentle hesitation, sometimes through a door that refuses to open no matter how many times you knock, sometimes through peace that disappears the moment you force your will. Heaven communicates not only by saying, go, but also by saying nothing. You are not being punished, you are being preserved. The unseen hand of restraint is the same hand that will later push you forward with power. But first, it must train you to recognize it in stillness. Because if you only follow God when He says, move, You'll miss his voice when he says, "Stop." Lo, think of Jonah running from Nineveh. His journey was full of movement, but empty of obedience. The storm was not sent to destroy him, but to redirect him. Sometimes the turbulence in your life is not the enemy attacking, it's heaven intervening. When heaven restrains you, it is rewriting routes. What looks like a detour is often a doorway disguised. What feels like rejection is heaven whispering, "That's not where your harvest grows." Marielle, after her fall, returned home different. She began to notice the quiet nudges. She once ignored the sense that a no was not disappointment, but mercy. Months later, when a new opportunity arrived, she paused. This time, she didn't rush. She prayed, waited, and peace filled the silence. The unseen hand that once restrained her now released her, and the new door stayed open, anchored in grace. You, too, will feel that release. But for now, the hand remains upon you, steady and sure. You are being hidden not from people, but for purpose. The delay is not distance, it is design. The enemy wants you to grow restless, to see God's restraint as rejection. But heaven's silence is not abandonment, it is attention. The Creator, who spoke galaxies into motion, is now holding your path with care. So, do not fight the invisible boundaries. They are your safety rails. Let them keep you until your heart is aligned with heaven's direction. One day, you will thank God not only for what He gave, but for everything He refused to allow. The unseen hand of restraint is not holding you back. It's keeping you alive for the moment when release will mean victory, not destruction. You have felt it, the weight of waiting, the endless cycle of hope and disappointment. People look at you and wonder why nothing seems to move, why you're still in the same place. They do not see the invisible refining that's happening beneath your skin. The world calls it delay. Heaven calls it development. When God hides His chosen ones, the earth misunderstands. They label your quiet as failure, your stillness as stagnation. Yet even a seed must die before it sprouts. Buried doesn't mean broken, it means becoming. There was a young woman named Neria who learned this truth the hard way. For years, she applied for promotions that never came. Each no felt heavier. Each rejection cut deeper. One evening, exhausted from striving, she sat on her bedroom floor and whispered, "Maybe I'm not meant to rise." But the spirit within her answered softly, "You are not delayed. You are being delayed from lesser things." Months later, her boss retired unexpectedly, and the company offered her the exact position she once prayed for, now at the perfect moment. When her character was ready to hold it, you, too, are being strengthened for your appointed moment. Waiting doesn't waste you, it weaves you into wisdom. The misunderstanding of your waiting season is proof that your process is heavenly, not human. God's timing rarely makes sense to crowds because crowds chase results. Heaven shapes roots. While others sprint ahead to temporary applause, you are being prepared for eternal impact. You have felt overlooked, forgotten. Maybe you've watched opportunities slip through your fingers like sand, wondering why the promise didn't hold. But heaven keeps what you can't yet carry. Every withheld door is an act of divine mercy. The prophet Isaiah once wrote that even youths grow weary, but those who wait upon the Lord renew their strength. Renewal doesn't happen while running, It happens while resting. You are not idle. You are incubating strength. Picture a butterfly within its cocoon. From the outside, it looks trapped, still, lifeless. But inside, its old form dissolves, so something stronger can emerge. If you tear open the cocoon too soon, you kill the wings. God is keeping your cocoon sealed until your flight can sustain you. We read in the book of James, chapter 1, verses 3 to 4. The testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Your waiting is not empty, it is productive. Each moment of silence teaches your heart to hear God above the noise. Each closed door trains you to discern truth over temptation. Every tear waters the soil of your next victory. When you finally move, you won't stumble, you'll stride. Because what's being built in you now will keep you when applause fades. The misunderstood waiting season is heaven's greatest classroom for strength, discernment, and obedience. Neria once said later, looking back, if God had answered me when I wanted, I would have lost everything when I least expected. That's the mystery of divine restraint. It saves you from blessings that would break you. So if you feel unseen, hidden, or delayed, remember this: the silence is not a sentence. It is an invitation to listen deeper. The waiting room of heaven is never empty. It's filled with angels preparing your table. You are not being punished, you're being positioned. The pause is prophetic. And now, as this truth settles in your spirit, type, I choose patience. Oh, write it as a whisper of trust, not as surrender to delay, but as agreement with divine timing. Every letter you type is a small act of faith, saying to heaven, I won't move without your signal. When you write, I choose patience, you are not declaring weakness, you are declaring mastery over your own impulses. You are saying, I trust the unseen more than the urgent. Heaven records that sentence as obedience, because patience is not passive, it is prophetic endurance. Every moment you resist the urge to force an outcome, you strengthen your spiritual muscles. Waiting well is an act of warfare. The enemy thrives on haste, but heaven moves through order. Patience is the armor that keeps you safe until divine timing opens its gates. So breathe. Let the world race if it must. You are not late, you are aligned. Each second of stillness is God's fingerprint, proving He is not finished with you yet. And when the next sign finally arrives, you won't question it, you'll recognize it, because your patience has trained your eyes to see heaven's hand in motion. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey when silence turns into testing. You've waited, trusted, prayed, and yet the stillness remains. The heavens seem quiet, and you begin to ask, did I do something wrong? Has God forgotten me? But this season is not about being forgotten, it's about being proven. Heaven is testing your obedience, not to expose your weakness, but to strengthen your spirit. Obedience is rarely glamorous. It is often hidden, uncomfortable, and misunderstood. It's choosing to stay when every instinct says run. It's surrendering your timing, even when you have the strength to force an outcome. True obedience begins when logic ends. There was once a man named Jorah. He was passionate, faithful, and ready to serve. When his business began to crumble, he prayed for instruction, but heard only silence. For months, he waited, watching his plans dissolve. Friends told him to act, to save himself, to do something. Yet every time he tried, peace left him. One night, as he sat alone with his Bible open, a verse caught his eye, and his heart steadied. He realized obedience wasn't about action, it was about alignment. He didn't need to do more, he needed to stop moving without permission. As written in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verse 22, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. Oh, those words struck him like a revelation. He had been offering God effort, but not obedience. And that night, for the first time in months, he stopped striving. He chose to trust instead of chase. The following week, an unexpected partnership appeared, one that restored what he had lost and multiplied it. Chosen one. Obedience will often feel like stillness before it feels like success. The testing of obedience is meant to separate your desire for control from your devotion to God's command. Anyone can follow when the path is clear. Few can remain faithful when it's not. This season is your wilderness classroom. It teaches you to recognize God's voice, even when it contradicts your comfort. Sometimes He will ask you to stay in a place that feels too small. Not because He wants to limit you, but because He's building your discipline. Sometimes He will close doors that you thought were blessings, to see if you will still praise Him in confusion. Obedience isn't proven in convenience, it's proven in resistance. It's saying yes when everything in you screams no. It's trusting the unseen structure of divine timing when the visible world demands results. Think of Abraham, asked to leave everything familiar for a land he could not see. Think of Peter, stepping out of a boat onto water that could not hold him. These moments weren't about understanding, they were about obedience. And in each story, the miracle didn't come before obedience, it followed it. When heaven tests your obedience, it's revealing whether your faith is attached to outcomes or to the one who commands them. If God said, "Wait," would you still worship? If He said, "Not yet," would you still believe? These are not questions of endurance, they are questions of trust. Jorah learned that obedience is not proven by grand gestures, but by quiet surrender. Each day he would wake, pray, and listen. And even when there was no answer, he stayed faithful to what God last told him. Over time, that consistency became his breakthrough. You might be standing in the same space between command and completion, between instruction and fulfillment. This gap is holy ground. It's where faith matures, where fear loses power, where character overtakes convenience. The testing of obedience often feels like tension, but that tension is proof of transformation. You are being pulled between what you want and what God wills. Let the pull refine you, because on the other side of obedience lies authority. When you obey, even in silence, heaven begins to trust you with more. Every uncelebrated yes becomes a key to the next door. Every hidden act of faith builds a foundation strong enough to carry public favor later. So, remain steady. When heaven seems quiet, assume not absence, but observation. God is watching how you wait, how you hold your heart in stillness, how you resist the urge to move ahead of His timing. Remember, obedience is not about perfection, it's about posture. Keep your heart turned toward heaven, even when you don't understand, because the same God who asks for your stillness is preparing to move mountains on your behalf. And when that movement comes, you'll realize it wasn't your striving that opened the way. It was your obedience that unlocked heaven's favor. There is a kind of warfare that no one sees, not the clash of swords or the roar of thunder, but the quiet trembling of a chosen one in waiting. While the world sees stillness, heaven sees battle. Every doubt you silence, every fear you overcome, every moment you choose faith instead of frustration, those are victories written in the unseen realm. You may not hear the war, but it rages around you. The moment you said yes to God's call, darkness marked you as a threat. Since then, every delay, every distraction, every storm of confusion has tried to pull you away from your purpose. The warfare is invisible, but its goal is clear: to break your focus before your breakthrough. Do you know what truly terrifies darkness? Your endurance. Because every time you keep standing, even trembling, you remind hell that heaven's hand is still upon you. There was once a young believer named Lear. He had fire in his heart and dreams that reached further than his resources. Every step of obedience seemed to bring opposition. His plans were attacked. His finances dried up. His strength faded. One night, he broke down and asked, "Why does obedience cost so much?" But heaven answered in the silence, "Because you are fighting battles that generations after you will never have to fight again." Oh, from that moment, Lear understood. Some wars are won not by movement, but by endurance. His stillness became his sword. The invisible battle around you is not to destroy you, it's to distract you. The enemy knows he can't cancel what God has already written, so he tries to drain your focus until you lay your crown down voluntarily. But you won't, because you were not chosen to collapse, you were chosen to conquer quietly, as declared in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6. Verse 12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." That means what's happening to you is not random, it's resistance. Every pressure you feel is proof of your position in the kingdom. Heaven doesn't waste pressure. It turns it into power. The warfare in your waiting season is refining your faith, like gold in the fire. You are being melted, not to destroy your worth, but to reveal it. Your prayers may feel unheard, but heaven hears the tremor in your voice. Every tear becomes oil for your future anointing. Lear once said later, "When I stopped asking God to end the battle and started asking Him to strengthen me within it, I found peace." That is where you are being led now, not away from conflict, but toward clarity. Now, I want to speak to you from the heart. Every message like this, every word that reaches you right where you are, is not just a video or a script. It is part of a divine assignment. It costs time, prayer, and devotion to keep pouring light into this space. If these words have ever strengthened you, helped you breathe through another storm, or reminded you that you are not alone, then consider this: you can become part of this light, not out of obligation, but out of love. Think of it like pouring oil into a lighthouse. Each drop keeps its flame alive, guiding someone lost at sea towards safety. When you like, share, or subscribe, you're not feeding an algorithm, you're turning that lamp higher so another soul can find the shore. And if your heart feels moved to go further, you may donate as one pours water into a garden of souls. Not because you must, But because generosity makes the light travel farther, there is no demand here. Only invitation, no pressure, only peace. This mission will continue regardless, but when you give, you place your fingerprints on the flame itself. You become part of the miracle, part of the story heaven is writing through every word that touches a weary heart. So if you feel that gentle stirring, pause for a moment and whisper, "Use me, Lord, however you will." Sometimes that prayer alone becomes the offering. Whether it's time, prayer, a simple share, or a quiet seed sown in faith, each act is a piece of light in motion. Together, we become a constellation of obedience, shining in the dark for others to find their way. And remember, light never competes with darkness, it simply shines. Each small act of giving, each click of faith, is another spark heaven can breathe upon. May every drop of your kindness return as rivers of grace. The flame you help sustain today may be the one that guides you tomorrow. There comes a time in every divine journey when heaven turns down the noise, not as punishment, but as purification. Everything that once felt familiar begins to fade, the voices, the habits, even the emotions that used to bring comfort. You start to notice how quiet your world has become. But this silence is not absence, it is an invitation. When heaven silences the noise, it is clearing space for your spirit to hear again. For too long, you have been surrounded by voices that spoke over God's whisper. The opinions of others became louder than divine direction. That's why heaven, in love, begins to remove the clutter. You may find that friendships shift, routines fall apart, and your old pleasures no longer satisfy you. You might even feel lonely. Yet loneliness is often the language heaven uses to remind you of its closeness. There was a chosen one named Selah who once thought she lost everything. She had a circle of people who laughed with her, but none who truly understood her calling. When heaven began to pull her away, she resisted. She clung to conversations that fed her fear, but one by one, those voices vanished. What remained was silence, and for a time, it terrified her. Yet, in that silence, Selah began to hear something she never had before, the steady rhythm of God's peace. It is revealed in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 21. Your ears shall hear a word behind you, saying, "This is the way, walk in it," when you turn to the right or when you turn to the left. Oh, that voice can only be heard when the world grows quiet. Heaven silences the noise not to punish your ears, but to restore your hearing. The quiet is where clarity lives. It's where the small whisper of heaven teaches you which doors to close and which to wait before. It's where confusion untangles itself, where your thoughts stop competing for dominance, and your soul exhales for the first time in years. Think of a musician tuning an instrument. Before the melody begins, there is a moment of silence, a careful adjusting of strings, a deliberate pause to align sound with intention. That's what heaven is doing with you, now tuning your heart so that when the next season begins, your life will play in harmony with its purpose. Salah once said, "I thought the silence meant God left me, but now I see it meant He trusted me enough to speak softly." That's what this season means for you. Heaven is speaking softly because it knows you are finally listening. So, if conversations feel dry, if social circles have shrunk, if old dreams have lost their taste, it's not because you are empty. It's because heaven is detoxing your atmosphere, removing the echoes of voices that no longer carry your frequency. When heaven silences the noise, it's not robbing you, it's refining you. You begin to crave truth over talk, peace over performance, purpose over popularity. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of focus. And in that focus, revelation grows. You will begin to sense what others cannot. You'll hear God in the stillness of your morning, in the rustle of leaves, in the pause between heartbeats. This is how heaven retrains your senses. You're learning to recognize divine rhythm over human rush. Every moment of stillness you endure is transforming you into someone who can move with heaven's precision. And one day, you'll thank God for every conversation that ended, every noise that faded, every plan that fell silent, because it all led you here to this sacred quiet, where purpose becomes clear again. So don't rush to fill the silence. Don't scramble to find noise to comfort you. Sit within it. Let it speak. Let it heal. There's a voice rising again, gentle yet powerful. It's heaven, whispering, "What's next?" You'll hear it soon, not through a shout, but through peace. And when you feel that confirmation deep inside, mark this moment as holy. Heaven has drawn near. If your heart recognizes that voice even faintly, take this as your prophetic act. Comment 555 below, not as superstition, but as declaration that you are ready to hear again. For in biblical symbolism, 5 represents grace, and today, that grace is being renewed in your hearing. Let the world know your silence is sacred, and your next sound will be heaven's. When you type 555, you are not chasing numbers, you are claiming grace. Each 5 stands for divine favor, divine protection, and divine guidance over your next steps. It's a symbol, not of luck, but of alignment. Let that number remind you, heaven is speaking again. Softly but clearly. The silence wasn't empty, it was sacred preparation for what comes next. Impatience is a quiet thief. It doesn't arrive with noise or warning, it seeps in slowly, whispering, "You've waited long enough." It convinces you that faith without visible results is failure. But the truth is, impatience is one of the enemy's oldest tricks. It doesn't need to destroy your destiny, it only needs to make you move too soon. When impatience takes root, it disguises itself as motivation. It pushes you to force what should flow. It tells you that waiting makes you weak. But divine timing is not about weakness, it's about wisdom. Every time you act outside of heaven's rhythm, you step out from under heaven's protection. There once was a chosen one named Ruel. He was destined for leadership, and his words carried influence. Yet his greatest weakness was haste. He wanted to see results, proof, and progress. When God asked him to wait before launching his ministry, Ruel ignored the inner restraint. He forced open the door that wasn't yet ready. For a while, it seemed to work. People gathered, momentum built, but without divine foundation, it all crumbled as quickly as it rose. The disappointment broke him, but the lesson remade him. Later, when God called again, Ruel moved not in ambition, but in alignment. The temptation to force doors is universal. Even Abraham, the father of faith, grew weary and produced Ishmael before Isaac's appointed time. His impatience birthed a promise out of order, a living reminder that even divine purposes can be delayed when rushed. God still fulfilled his covenant. But Abraham's detour made the journey heavier than it needed to be. This same temptation still whispers to every chosen soul, do something, make it happen. But heaven doesn't need your help, it needs your trust. God is not slow, he is strategic. Each delay you face is a rearrangement of events, hearts, and timings to ensure your step lands on solid ground. It is recorded in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 11. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Notice it doesn't say, in your time. It says in its time. There is beauty attached to divine order. Step too soon, and what should bloom with fragrance will break under pressure. Think of a fruit picked before it ripens. It may look ready on the outside, but the taste betrays the truth. So it is with destiny. When you rush the process, you strip sweetness from your purpose. Heaven's fruit takes time, sunlight, rain, pruning, waiting. Ruel once said afterward, "The hardest thing I learned was to stop asking God for speed and start asking him for sequence." That is the wisdom of waiting, not delaying action, but aligning it. Every miracle in Scripture required sequence. Noah had to finish building before the rain. David had to endure hiding before the throne. Jesus had to walk to the cross before resurrection. Skipping steps is how blessings premature. You might be standing before something that looks almost ready, a relationship, a business, a dream, and your hands tremble to open it. But if heaven has not said now, then the most powerful move you can make is stillness. Obedience sometimes looks like inaction, but in the unseen, it's the sound of angels guarding your lane. When you feel that internal pull to act, pause and ask, am I being led? Or am I being lured? The enemy lures through urgency. God leads through peace. One demands, the other directs. Sometimes the test is not in what you do, but in what you resist. Every chosen one must learn to master momentum, knowing when to stop as much as when to go. Because premature movement can cost more than delay ever could. There is beauty in restraint. Like a painter who steps back from the canvas before adding the final stroke. Heaven is teaching you to step back, to see the larger picture. What you think is inactivity is divine precision being drawn across time. Patience is not passivity, it's partnership. You and heaven are co-authors of destiny, and heaven will never rush a masterpiece. The greatest mistake is thinking that faith equals speed. It doesn't. Faith equals surrender. Royal, after his collapse, became known not for the ministry he lost, but for the peace he carried afterward. He no longer rushed. He learned that God's timing was never late, it was layered. Every time he looked back, he could see how perfectly every delay connected. So, chosen one, if impatience knocks on your door, do not answer it. Let peace open instead. Rest in the knowledge that what's meant for you will not miss you. It's being built for you. Even as you read these words, the temptation to force doors will fade when you realize that no door heaven seals can bless you, and no door heaven opens can be closed by man. Stay in rhythm. Move only when heaven breathes, because the same hand that withholds today will release tomorrow with unstoppable grace. There is a reason heaven silences certain seasons, because the next voice you must recognize is not the crowd's, but God's. After the storm of confusion fades, What remains is the whisper, and within that whisper lies the map to your next assignment. But for most, the hardest part is not hearing God's voice. It's quieting everything else long enough to recognize it. You've been surrounded by noise for so long: opinions, trends, advice, fears disguised as wisdom. The enemy doesn't always attack with chaos. Sometimes he attacks with volume. He fills your mind with 100 good options so you'll miss the one divine instruction. That's why heaven begins to strip away distractions. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. There was a man named Caleb who learned this lesson during a season that felt like exile. He had lost his job. His friends drifted away, and even prayer felt empty. He thought God was silent. But what really happened was this: heaven was tuning him to a higher frequency. In the stillness, his spirit began to recognize the difference between God's guidance and his own assumptions. One night, exhausted and unsure, he said aloud, "God, I can't hear you." And in that moment, a thought so clear entered his mind, it startled him. "I never stopped speaking. You just stopped listening." Caleb realized the voice of God had been echoing through his conscience, his peace, even his discomfort. It was never gone. It was just buried beneath the noise of expectation. It is written in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 27, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." That is the essence of divine communication. It's not about how loud heaven speaks, but how still you are to follow. God doesn't compete with noise. He waits for silence. Sometimes he will speak through peace, sometimes through conviction, sometimes through a sudden sense of knowing that feels lighter than logic. The voice of God never manipulates, it aligns. It never rushes. It reassures. The world will teach you to make decisions through pressure and urgency. Heaven teaches you to move through rest and revelation. That's why discernment is so critical in this era of distraction. Not every voice that quotes scripture speaks for God. Not every opportunity labeled blessing carries heaven's fingerprint. Discernment is the art of hearing truth beneath appearances. Caleb began to train himself to recognize the divine pattern. Whenever a thought or path brought anxiety and haste, he paused. Whenever it brought peace, even when it required patience, he followed. Slowly, his life aligned again. He learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of divine order. You, too, are learning this discipline. The moment you sense confusion rising, that's your cue to be still. The Spirit speaks in ways the human mind can't imitate. You will feel it not as noise, but as knowing, like the calm that enters a room before sunrise, or the soft pull in your heart when you're about to choose right. There's something sacred about walking with God through silence. It teaches you to rely not on signs, but on sensitivity. To walk not by sight, but by spirit. When heaven silences the noise, you discover how divine direction feels inside your own bones. It's no longer an external command. It becomes an internal compass. Caleb's story ended differently than he expected. The job he lost never returned, but something greater came. He began mentoring others, not out of strategy, but obedience. What once felt like loss became a new layer of calling, and every decision he made afterward began with one simple prayer: Lord, help me hear you before I move. Oh, that prayer became his shield, his sword, his source of wisdom. and through it, he learned that divine direction is not a map, it's a melody. Each note comes only as you walk, each step revealing the next sound. So if heaven has quieted your world, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it reshape your hearing. The quiet may be uncomfortable now, but soon you'll realize it's where you were meant to meet God all along. And when that happens, you won't need constant signs or confirmations anymore. You'll simply know. The whisper will be enough. In that knowing, fear loses its grip. You begin to understand that faith isn't guessing, it's recognizing heaven's rhythm inside your own heartbeat. The whisper becomes your guide, the stillness, your strength. And as you keep walking, you'll realize that what you once called silence was actually God speaking the whole time, just in a language the noise could never translate. That's how heaven teaches you to walk by spirit, not sight. When you walk through seasons of silence, not every sign that appears is from heaven. The enemy knows how to imitate light, how to dress deception in divine colors. He offers shortcuts that look like answered prayers but lead to spiritual exhaustion. That is why discernment is not optional. It is your survival. You must learn to test every sign. Not every open door is an invitation, and not every closed one is rejection. Some doors swing wide just to distract you from the one heaven was preparing. The counterfeit always appears before the authentic. It's how the adversary tests your hunger. There was once a man named Tobias who prayed for direction. He was weary from waiting, desperate for a breakthrough. One morning, he received an unexpected job offer with everything he had asked for: the pay, the title, even the city he wanted to live in. He jumped at it, believing it was divine favor. But within months, the peace that had filled his heart began to fade. The company's ethics clashed with his spirit, and his nights became restless. That's when he realized, just because something looks right doesn't mean it was sent from heaven. According to the first letter of John, chapter 4, verse 1, Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Testing is an act of wisdom. It's asking not, does this make me happy? But, does this make me holy? It's feeling the texture of peace before signing a deal, listening for alignment before accepting opportunity. Heaven's path will never require you to compromise truth to reach blessing. The counterfeit always flatters your impatience. It promises ease, speed, and instant reward. But the true sign carries peace even in uncertainty. It might not come wrapped in comfort, but it will come clothed in clarity. Tobias learned that divine peace doesn't just visit once, it stays. After he left that job and waited again, a second offer arrived, less glamorous, but undeniably right. This time, he tested it. He prayed, fasted, and waited for confirmation. When he accepted it, the difference was unmistakable. His days carried strength. His nights carried rest. He discovered that heaven's favor is not fragile, it settles deep. So, chosen one, learn to pause before you proclaim. Not every good thing is a God thing. Ask yourself, does this align with his character? Or only with my craving? Discernment is the ability to sense heaven's fingerprints. It is refined in stillness, sharpened through scripture, and proven through obedience. You don't gain discernment by rushing decisions. You gain it by surrendering outcomes. There will come moments when signs appear too perfect to question an offer, a relationship, an opportunity that feels like destiny. But wait, heaven's signs never contradict heaven's word. The spirit that leads you to a door will also bring peace when you walk through it. If confusion lingers, that door may not be yours. The counterfeit can glitter, but it cannot glow. It attracts light. It doesn't carry it. That's how you'll know the difference. One will drain your peace, the other will deepen it. You must also remember sometimes heaven will send a sign through stillness. No movement, no answer. Just a quiet conviction that says, "Stay." Don't ignore that silence. It often speaks louder than miracles. Tobias, now older and wiser, teaches others to wait longer before saying yes. He says, if it's truly from heaven, time will never make it fade. But if it's not, time will always expose it. Your spiritual maturity is measured not by how fast you act, but by how faithfully you wait for confirmation. Heaven's signs don't require you to beg, they require you to believe. So, if you are standing before an open door, pause. Ask for peace more than proof. Ask for wisdom more than wonder. The right sign will bring both. And when you recognize that truth, when you sense which voice is real and which is imitation, seal it with faith. Type, "I discern clearly," and write it as a declaration, not a reaction. You are proclaiming that your spirit will no longer chase counterfeit lights, but follow only the glow that carries heaven's peace. When you type, "I discern clearly," you're not just repeating words, you're training your spirit to respond differently. You are choosing to see beyond appearances, to wait for peace before progress, to listen for the whisper instead of chasing the noise. That is spiritual maturity in motion. Let that declaration anchor you. The moment you choose clarity over speed, deception loses its power. You begin walking not by assumption, but by anointing, and every step after this will carry heaven's approval, not human applause. There comes a sacred moment when heaven finally moves. You've waited through silence, endured testing, resisted impatience, and stood firm against counterfeits, and then suddenly, something shifts. You can't explain it, but you feel it. The air around you grows lighter, prayer becomes alive again, and peace begins to hum quietly beneath your ribs. That's what divine release feels like. Heaven's movement is rarely loud. It doesn't always arrive in trumpets or earthquakes. Sometimes it's a single whisper that changes everything. Now, that one word from heaven carries the weight of years. Every tear, every delay, every unanswered question suddenly finds its place in the pattern. There was once a woman named Amara who waited for a promise that seemed too far gone. She had prayed until words ran dry, served faithfully while others soared ahead, and wondered if God had forgotten her. But one dawn, as she sat watching the horizon, she felt peace rush in like morning light. No sign, no voice, no miracle, just peace. And in that stillness, heaven spoke within her spirit, "It's time." And within days, opportunities began aligning like constellations. Calls came, doors opened. The flow she had begged for years ago now met her like a river remembering its path. That's how divine timing works. It doesn't trickle, it floods. As written in the book of Psalm, chapter 37, verse 7, "Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Do not fret." When people succeed in their ways, heaven's release never competes, it completes. When it happens, there is no confusion, no striving, not chasing. It feels like breathing after holding your breath too long. Chosen one. When the movement comes, it won't need to be forced. You'll simply recognize it by the way it fits, like a key finally turning in its rightful lock. Everything will align, not by your effort, but by his orchestration. When that moment arrives, protect your peace. Don't rush to broadcast it. Don't let noise dilute the sacredness of what's unfolding. Let it grow quietly, like dawn climbing the sky, inevitable, unstoppable, holy. Amara once said, "When it was finally time, I didn't feel pressure. I felt permission." That is how you'll know heaven has moved. Permission carries peace, pressure carries fear. And as you stand on that threshold of release, let your heart stay soft. Remember the ones who are still in waiting. The light that's about to shine on you is meant to reflect through you. You are not just receiving breakthrough, you are becoming it for someone else. Now, I want to speak heart to heart. Every message like this, every word that reaches you right where you are, is not just a video or a script. It is part of a divine assignment. It costs prayer, time, and faith to keep pouring light into this space. And if these words have touched your soul, if you've ever found strength in the middle of the night because of them, then you are already part of this mission. Think of it like sending out a flock of luminous birds. Each like, share, or subscribe. You release is a wing beat of hope, carrying this light to someone still lost in shadow. You're not feeding an algorithm, you're releasing small messengers of grace into the world. And if your spirit ever whispers to go deeper, you can donate, not as duty, but as a gift. Picture it as planting a seed in heaven's garden, a seed that grows into shade for weary travelers, or as dropping a silver bell into the mist, whose echo reaches hearts you'll never meet. It's never about the amount, it's about the intention. This light will keep burning regardless, but when you choose to give, you become the keeper of its flame. You hold a corner of the lantern that guides souls home. So, if your heart stirs, don't rush, pause it. Breathe, and simply say, if this light is yours, Lord, let me help it shine, whether that help is prayer, presence, or a quiet offering. Every act adds another spark to the constellation heaven is forming through us. Together, our kindness becomes a river of light. Every ripple touches another soul, and somewhere far away, someone whispers, "Thank you," without even knowing your name. That's the beauty of holy giving. It's invisible, yet eternal. And remember, light never asks permission to shine, it simply does. The smallest gesture, when done with love, becomes a bridge between heaven and a weary heart on earth. Let your giving, whether through words, time, or kindness, become a silent hymn that keeps traveling long after you've forgotten it. That's how eternal work is done. Every divine sign carries more than direction, it carries instruction. When heaven finally moves, it doesn't just open a door, it delivers a manual for how to walk through it. Many miss this truth. They celebrate the blessing, but ignore the blueprint. Yet God never sends release without requiring responsibility. The moment heaven gives the signal, listen closely. The sign itself is not the destination, it's a compass. It points, but it doesn't carry. The steps that follow are where obedience is tested again. There was a chosen one named Micah who had prayed for years for his purpose to unfold. One night, in a quiet moment of worship, he felt a strong assurance that his time had come. The very next day, opportunities began appearing like rain after drought calls. Invitations, open paths. He was overwhelmed. In excitement, he accepted everything, assuming that every open door meant divine permission. But within weeks, exhaustion swallowed him. The same opportunities that once thrilled him began to drain his strength. That's when he realized heaven's signs require discerned steps, not impulsive leaps. As written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 7, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Oh, Micah returned to stillness. He prayed not for more signs, but for clarity, slowly. The Spirit taught him that each blessing carries a set of divine instructions, timing, boundaries, and posture. He didn't need to accept every door, only the one that aligned with peace. And once he followed that single leading, everything else began to harmonize. When heaven gives instruction, it often comes as a subtle nudge rather than a detailed map. You might not see the full staircase, only the next step. That's how God protects the purity of your journey. If you saw everything at once, you'd depend on strategy more than surrender. Instructions also come to protect the promise. Every great move of God is fragile in its infancy. It requires stewardship, not spectacle. Moses received clear instruction for building the tabernacle, Noah for the ark, Joshua for marching around Jericho. Each victory depended not on their strength, but on their willingness to follow divine detail. This is the secret that separates those who start from those who sustain. Many people receive a sign and move with zeal, but few listen for the ongoing voice that maintains the promise. The same God who says, "Go," will also whisper, "Pause," or "Turn." Heaven's instructions evolve as seasons shift. The moment you stop listening is the moment progress turns into pride. God never calls you to perform miracles without partnership. Even Jesus said he did nothing except what he saw the Father doing. That's how divine alignment works. It's continual listening. Micah began to live differently after learning this. Each morning, before opening his messages or answering calls, he would say, "Lord, show me today's assignment." Sometimes that meant resting. Sometimes it meant speaking. Sometimes it meant letting go of something that no longer carried grace. Slowly, his days began to move with rhythm instead of rush. You, too, are learning that rhythm. Heaven's instructions are not just rules, they are love letters disguised as commands. Each one guards your peace, protects your purpose, and aligns your heart with heaven's order. To follow divine instruction, you must cultivate sensitivity. God rarely repeats himself. When you miss one instruction, grace covers you, but awareness matures you. It's not about perfection, it's about attention. The same voice that told you to wait is the one that will now tell you when to move. The next sign that comes your way may look simple, but inside it is layered wisdom. Don't rush to act, sit with it. Pray over it, and let peace confirm it. Heaven's signs are living things. They breathe revelation over time. Micah discovered that when he obeyed the instructions attached to the sign, his progress no longer felt forced. It flowed. The right doors opened naturally. The wrong ones closed quietly. He didn't have to chase favor. Favor began to chase him. That's what happens when you follow divine instruction. You no longer fight for stability. Heaven sustains it for you. So, chosen one, when your next sign appears, don't just celebrate it. Study it. Ask, Lord, what is this teaching me? Because hidden inside every direction is a deeper invitation to trust, to grow, to guard what you've prayed for. The sign is the signal. The instruction is the safeguard. Obedience is the bridge between the two. Walk with care. Listen with reverence. And move with precision. For the same God who speaks once is still speaking, now guiding your steps, one silent instruction at a time. Every true movement of heaven comes with alignment. It's not just about stepping forward. It's about being surrounded by the right people, in the right places, at the right time. Timing without alignment is like wind without sails. It moves, but it carries nothing. Alignment is heaven's way of ensuring your destiny doesn't drift. You've probably felt this lately, the gentle pulling away from some connections and the drawing near of others. Heaven does not allow everyone to walk beside you in every season. The ones who celebrated you in one chapter may not understand you in the next. That's not betrayal, it's transition. There was a woman named Sarah who prayed for God to send her community people who would understand her calling, not just her conversation. For years, she felt misplaced, like a puzzle piece in the wrong box. But one night, while reading and praying, she heard the words in her spirit, "You don't fit where you've outgrown." The next few months were uncomfortable. Friends distanced themselves. Doors closed. Silence stretched, but something new was forming. Slowly, heaven began to align her life. A mentor appeared out of nowhere, offering wisdom that felt like it came straight from eternity. A new job surfaced that matched not just her skill but her purpose. It wasn't coincidence, it was coordination. Heaven had rearranged her atmosphere to fit the version of her that obedience was creating, as revealed in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works together for good to those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. Now, that's the mystery of divine alignment. It's not always visible. It often feels like loss before it feels like guidance. But behind every shift, every goodbye, every uncomfortable silence, there is a divine rearranging taking place. Sometimes alignment comes as redirection. God removes certain people not because they're evil, but because their assignment in your story is complete. Their absence doesn't mean failure, it means fulfillment of their part. Heaven never wastes characters, it simply edits the cast when the plot changes. Sarah realized that the loneliness she felt was actually God clearing space for new connections. Heaven doesn't multiply until subtraction is complete. You can't align with what's meant for you while clinging to what's expired. Divine alignment is also about your inner world. Heaven aligns your heart before it aligns your circumstances. That's why you've been feeling the urge to let go of things that used to comfort you. Old mindsets, old fears, old ambitions. They can't travel where you're going. You're shedding what no longer fits the shape of your purpose. There's a powerful peace that comes when everything finally begins to align. It feels like puzzle pieces snapping into place after years of searching. You stop forcing connections. You stop begging people to understand you. You simply walk, and heaven walks with you. When alignment happens, even delays serve destiny. The right people appear when your heart is ready to receive them. The right doors open when you've learned to guard what's inside. You won't need to chase it, will all converge around your obedience. Think of a constellation. Each star shines alone, but when connected in divine design, it forms a pattern that guides travelers through the night. That's what alignment does. It takes scattered experiences and links them into meaning. Suddenly, what didn't make sense now glows with purpose. Sarah looked back years later and saw the wisdom of every closed door. She said, "If God had allowed everyone to stay, I never would have discovered who I was without their approval." That's what divine alignment gives you: clarity, independence, and community rooted in truth. Heaven is aligning not just people to you, but you to purpose. That's why you're feeling this internal calibration. It's not anxiety, it's adjustment. Every holy calling requires rebalancing before release. When alignment happens, favor stops fighting you. It finds you. You will see that even your setbacks were secretly setups. Every disappointment was an arrow pointing to destiny. And when you recognize that peace within you, the sense that things are finally connecting, mark that moment as sacred. It means heaven has shifted your coordinates, and your life now matches heaven's map. If you feel this in your spirit, if something inside you whispers, "Yes, that's me, I'm realigning," then seal this revelation with a prophetic act. Comment 888 below. Not as superstition, but as a sign of agreement. 8 is the number of new beginnings, of divine order restored. When you type 888, you're declaring, "Heaven, align me fully with your design. Remove what hinders, connect what's holy, and let my steps match your rhythm." No, this is not the end of your waiting. It's the beginning of your alignment. What's coming next will make sense of everything that came before. When heaven finally aligns everything around you, movement begins, but not like before. This time, you don't rush, you glide. You don't chase, you flow. Every step lands exactly where it's meant to. This is what it means to walk in holy precision, where your actions are no longer driven by anxiety, but guided by awareness. Walking in precision isn't about perfection, it's about partnership. You are no longer reacting to life, you are responding to heaven. Every decision, every word, every silence carries intention. It's not that the path suddenly becomes easy, it's that your spirit becomes steady. You've learned the rhythm of heaven, and now you move to its pulse. There was a man named Elian who embodied this truth. For years, he tried to make things happen on his own. He chased opportunities, forced plans, and exhausted himself trying to make destiny work. But when he finally surrendered, truly surrendered, everything changed. Instead of chasing the wind, he began to feel it guiding his steps. He once said, "When I stopped running ahead of God, I realized he was already walking beside me." That's what divine precision feels like. You don't have to predict the future, you simply remain present. God doesn't need you to understand every detail, he needs you to trust the next instruction. As revealed in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, Verse 15, in quietness and confidence shall be your strength. End of confidence doesn't come from control, it comes from communion. The closer you walk with heaven, the clearer your inner compass becomes. The noise that once confused you now sounds distant. The pressure to prove yourself dissolves into peace. Elian discovered that when he moved with heaven's precision, even small acts carried supernatural impact. A single conversation would unlock favor. A delayed meeting would reveal divine timing. Coincidences became confirmations. It wasn't luck, it was alignment at work. You might notice this happening. 2. When you start walking in sync with heaven, time seems to bend. You meet the right person at the right moment. Avoid unseen danger by a second, or receive a message that speaks directly to what you prayed hours before. That's holy precision in motion, the invisible choreography of divine grace. But walking in this rhythm requires sensitivity. Precision doesn't thrive in hurry. It grows in stillness, in prayer, in humility. The Spirit doesn't shout directions, it whispers them. You'll feel a tug in your heart, a restlessness that warns you, or a peace that releases you. Heaven leads gently, so that only those who truly listen can follow. Precision is also protection. When you move exactly when heaven says move, you bypass traps set by the enemy. You sidestep chaos that could have consumed you. God's timing is not just perfect, it's protective. What feels like delay is often divine recalculation, ensuring you don't collide with what isn't meant for you. Elian learned this after missing what seemed like a major opportunity. He had prepared months for a partnership that suddenly dissolved the week of signing. He was crushed. But 2 months later, the organization collapsed in scandal. What he thought was loss turned out to be mercy. Heaven's precision had spared him. Walking in precision doesn't mean you'll always understand, but it does mean you'll always arrive. Every detour, every pause, every redirection fits a pattern too vast for human logic. The goal is not to figure out the path, it's to remain faithful on it. Sometimes, precision means saying less. Other times, it means acting boldly. It may mean forgiving when you'd rather withdraw, or resting when you'd rather perform. The Spirit's instruction won't always make sense at first, but it will always make peace later. When you live in this flow, your life becomes evidence that heaven is near. People around you start to notice something different. They can't explain your calm, your timing, your discernment. They'll call it intuition, but you'll know it's intimacy. Elian eventually described this season as learning to dance with the invisible. Each day became a step in rhythm with grace. He didn't need to control the music. He trusted the composer. So, chosen one, this is your next chapter, not striving, not forcing, but flowing. Every prayer, every pause, every yes and no is part of the choreography. Stay sensitive, stay surrendered, because when you walk in holy precision, even your stillness becomes strategy, and even your quiet becomes victory. Heaven has already set the rhythm. Now, all that's left is for you to move in time. When you begin to move in holy precision, something inevitable happens. Darkness notices. The moment you walk in alignment, the forces that once ignored you begin to resist you. This is not punishment, it is confirmation. You have become visible in the Spirit. Your obedience has activated attention. The backlash of darkness is proof that heaven's light in you is growing brighter. The greater your calling, the greater the countercurrent. You may feel unexpected fatigue, strange, discouragement, or even conflict from places you once found peace. Don't misread it. These are not random attacks, they are reactions. When you rise, darkness trembles. There was a chosen one named Lydia who discovered this reality the moment her ministry began to flourish. Doors were opening. Messages were reaching hearts. And then suddenly, storms came, financial strain, misunderstandings, false accusations. She asked God, "Why now? I thought I was obeying you." And heaven whispered, "Exactly. No. Obedience paints a target on your back, but it also draws angels to your side. For every resistance that appears, there is reinforcement already released. You are never left uncovered." It is written in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 4. "The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds." Now, that means your defense is not found in reaction, but in revelation. You don't fight darkness by matching its energy, you overcome it by maintaining your light. Every time you respond with peace instead of panic, you wage war with wisdom. Lydia learned to stop chasing explanations and started guarding her atmosphere. She realized that not every battle deserved her attention. Some storms only exist to test whether she remembered her authority. So, she prayed differently. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" she began saying, "Lord, teach me what this moment reveals." And suddenly, fear lost its footing. The backlash of darkness is not a sign that you are off course. It's evidence that you're making progress. If you were moving in the wrong direction, resistance would rest. But since you're advancing toward purpose, it must respond. The enemy cannot destroy a chosen one, but he can attempt to distract. That's his true weapon, distraction, disguised as disaster. You must remember this. The battle is not about your comfort, it's about your consistency. Heaven doesn't need you to be unshaken, it needs you to keep standing. Every hit you endure strengthens your authority. Every moment you refuse to quit becomes a sermon that darkness cannot silence. Think of an eagle flying through a storm. Lesser birds hide beneath trees, but the eagle spreads its wings and lets the wind lift it higher. The same storm that destroys others becomes the reason it ascends. That is how you must see your warfare. It's not designed to drown you, but to elevate you. Lydia once said, "When I stopped seeing the attack as punishment and started seeing it as promotion, everything changed." The moment you stop running from pressure and start recognizing its purpose, you begin to reign in the very atmosphere that once intimidated you. There will be days when the backlash feels personal, when you lose support, when people misunderstand your silence, when fatigue whispers, "You should stop." But heaven sees every wound and measures every tear. None of it is wasted. The blows that hit hardest are shaping armor you will wear for the rest of your journey. This battle refines you. It teaches you what not to carry. It burns away dependence on approval, leaving only conviction. Every chosen one must pass through this purification. You cannot lead light until you've learned to live in it under fire. Darkness will try to make you question your progress. It will whisper, "If you were really chosen, why would you be struggling?" But the truth is the opposite. The struggle proves the calling. The presence of opposition is the sign of purpose. The louder the resistance, the clearer the assignment. When you face backlash, don't shrink, stabilize. Stand your ground with stillness. Heaven never asked you to fight everything that moves, only to hold your position. Your peace is your proof. The world may misread your calm as weakness, but heaven calls it mastery. You have learned that not every battle deserves your sword. Some victories belong to your silence. Lydia later described her turning point. I realized I didn't have to win every fight. I just had to outlast the storm. That's what you're being trained for. Endurance that outlives resistance. So, when darkness reacts, remember, it's not about breaking you. It's about verifying you. You are now marked by obedience, sealed with peace, and wrapped in light strong enough to stand through any shadow. Every wound you've carried from the waiting, every tear that fell in silence, every battle fought behind closed doors, none of it has been wasted. What once felt like delay has become refinement. What once broke you has built you. This is the season where heaven turns endurance into authority. This is the glory hidden inside obedience. You may not realize it yet, but every yes you whispered in secret is now echoing in eternity. Heaven remembers the nights you didn't give up, the mornings you rose when you didn't feel strong enough, the prayers you prayed without applause. Those unseen moments are the reason you are still standing. There was a chosen one named Ezra who went through years of obscurity. He watched others shine while he stayed hidden. He served faithfully in silence, learning to love without recognition. One day, as he walked by a quiet river, God whispered to his heart, "The water doesn't rush to be seen, it flows to give life." That sentence changed everything. Ezra realized that the power of his calling wasn't in being noticed, it was in being faithful. As written in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17, "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, works for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." The glory that comes from obedience is not loud. It shines quietly, like light through stained glass, beautiful because of what it's been through. Every scar becomes a window where grace passes through you to reach others. That's what makes you unstoppable now. Not because life is easy, but because your spirit has learned resilience. The same pain that once silenced you has become the voice that speaks hope into others. You are living proof that surrender is stronger than striving. Ezra eventually became a quiet pillar for many. People would come to him for advice, not because he was famous, but because peace followed him. He never sought a stage, but God made his life a testimony. That's the glory of obedience. It shines without seeking attention. Now, as these words reach you, take a moment to breathe. Feel how far you've come. Heaven has seen every chapter, even the ones you thought would end in darkness, and still you are here. Light burning, faith unbroken. The message you're hearing now isn't random, it's part of your restoration. It's heaven reminding you that you are not forgotten, and that your story still carries purpose beyond pain. Think of every like, share, or comment not as a digital action, but as a sacred echo. Each one is a lantern you hang along a dark road, helping another traveler find their way. When you press that button, imagine whispering, "This light helped me. May it reach you too." Endless. If your heart feels stirred to subscribe, let it be more than a habit. See it as placing another candle on heaven's altar. promising to walk faithfully with the light that keeps visiting you. And if you ever feel led to donate, do it softly, as one would pour water over the roots of a growing tree, not obligation offering, not payment partnership. Every drop you give nourishes the soil where hope is planted, somewhere unseen. Your generosity will blossom into someone else's answered prayer. Nothing here is demanded. Everything is invitation. The beauty of heaven's work is that it flows through willing hearts, never pressured ones. You're not supporting content, you're sustaining calling. Let your giving, your sharing, your silent amen in the comments be like seeds carried by the wind. You may never see where they land, but heaven watches each one take root in places you'll never visit. Ezra's story ended by that same river. Only now, he was not walking alone. Others came to drink from the peace his obedience had created. He smiled and said, "The current that once carried me away now carries others toward grace. Laugh it, and so will you. Your life, your kindness, your unseen, yes, it all becomes the river through which heaven still moves. And if ever you wonder whether your small act matters, remember, this light never asks how big the flame is before it shines. It simply gives. Your simple yes, your quiet offering, becomes a bridge between heaven's heart and someone's midnight, somewhere far away. Your ripple will meet another soul's need. The light you helped send will circle back as warmth you didn't know you'd planted. That's how grace travels silently, faithfully, endlessly. So keep walking in this rhythm of giving and receiving. Heaven sees, heaven multiplies, and heaven always remembers those who chose to keep the flame alive. There comes a moment in the journey of every chosen one when you realize you are no longer waiting for signs. You have become one. What once guided you from the outside now flows from within. The same light you once chased has begun to shine through you. You are no longer searching for confirmation. Your life itself has become confirmation. This transformation is quiet but unmistakable. It's not announced by applause or approval. It's revealed in the peace that follows your obedience. When you walk into a room, atmospheres shift. When you speak, hearts steady. You don't try to convince anyone. You simply carry evidence that heaven is real. There was a woman named Elara who learned this without realizing it. She used to beg for signs, flickers of reassurance that God was still near. She would pray for visions, dreams, prophetic words. But one morning, as she comforted a friend who was losing hope, she felt a strange realization rise inside her. The very words she spoke to others were the same ones she once longed to hear. In that moment, she understood she had become the vessel through which heaven now speaks. As recorded in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." That's what happens when heaven matures a soul. You stop needing validation because you have become illumination. You no longer measure your faith by what you receive, but by what you release. The glory that once surrounded you now lives inside you. Becoming the signal for others doesn't mean you'll always feel strong. In fact, the opposite is true. The light you carry often shines through cracks. God does not wait for perfection to reveal purpose. He uses transparency as testimony. People are drawn not to your strength, but to the peace that covers your weakness. Elara found that the more she surrendered, the more others found their way through her example. Her life became like a lighthouse standing firm against waves, unmoved by the storm, yet lit for others to see. The miracle wasn't that the storm stopped, it was that her light stayed. When heaven turns you into a sign, even your silence begins to speak. You become a living message of hope, not because you avoid hardship, but because you endure it with grace. Those who once doubted your journey begin to sense something different. They can't explain it, but they can feel it. This is what divine maturity looks like. You stop asking, "Lord, show me the way," and start saying, "Lord, make me the way." Every challenge you've endured becomes a key for someone else's door. Every lesson you've learned becomes bread for another traveler's table. Heaven doesn't choose perfect vessels, it chooses willing ones. The cracks in your story are where the light escapes. What you thought disqualified you has actually become the evidence of divine craftsmanship. You were never called to be flawless, you were called to be faithful. Ilara, once desperate for direction, now found herself guiding others, not through titles or teaching, but through quiet consistency. She didn't need to announce that she was chosen. The peace around her did it for her. And that's how heaven's signals work. They don't demand attention, they command awareness. You are entering that same stage now. The world no longer needs to tell you who you are. Heaven already has. The signs you once sought in the sky now live within your spirit. You have become the proof that waiting works, that obedience bears fruit, that faith never fails. Becoming a signal also means learning balance. Your light must shine, but it must also rest. Even the sun sets to allow night its turn. Don't fear the quiet seasons, they are when your roots deepen. The world may not always see you, but heaven never looks away. Every step you take now carries weight. People you may never meet are being guided by the echo of your obedience. You have become a part of heaven's compass, one that points others toward hope. Even when you're unaware, Ilara often said, "The greatest sign that heaven ever sent me was realizing I had become one." And that is true for you too. The mark of divine maturity is no longer needing evidence, because your life has become evidence. You are now a light on a hill, humble, steady, unstoppable. The darkness doesn't disappear because of you. It simply can't stay the same around you. You are heaven's living signal, seen, steady, and strong. And now, the final transformation begins. You are no longer the one who waits for heaven's next sign. You are the sign itself. Every breath, every action, every word has become part of the divine pattern. Heaven's fingerprints now mark your life so clearly that others can trace their way back to God just by watching how you walk. This is what it means to be fully awakened in your purpose. You no longer live in reaction to the world, you move in rhythm with heaven. You've been through silence, fire, storms, and solitude, and yet something within you remains untouched. That is the divine spark that never dims. No matter the season, there was once a man named Jonah, not the prophet, but an ordinary soul who, like you, carried extraordinary purpose. He spent years doubting his value, always searching for another sign to confirm that he was enough. One day, while mentoring a young believer who was struggling to hear God, Jonah realized something profound. Every word of comfort that flowed from his lips was the same comfort he had once begged heaven to send him. He didn't need another sign, he had become one. That realization freed him. He stopped striving to prove his worth and began to rest in divine purpose. Every encounter became ministry. Every moment became sacred. He no longer needed to chase destiny, because destiny was already unfolding through his daily obedience. As written in the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verse 13, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to act, in order to fulfill his good purpose." That's the truth of your life now. Heaven is no longer working for you, it's working through you. You have become a living vessel of divine intention. Every time you extend kindness, heaven moves. Every time you forgive, heaven heals. Every time you choose peace over pride, heaven wins another battle in silence. You are heaven's continuation on earth. What began as a whisper in your heart has become a movement through your hands. You are proof that God still breathes through people. The same spirit that hovered over creation now hovers over your choices, shaping the world through your obedience. Jonah found peace not in perfection, but in partnership. He realized that being chosen never meant being flawless. It meant being available. That's what heaven asks of you now: availability. To be open when others close. To love when others withdraw. To listen when others rush. These small acts are the architecture of eternity being built through your life. When you live like this, even ordinary moments turn holy. A simple conversation becomes healing. A quiet prayer becomes intercession for someone miles away. You start to sense that time itself bends around divine purpose. You're not just existing anymore, you're participating in creation's ongoing song. To be the sign is to live as reflection. You no longer carry the light, you are the light. Not because you shine on your own, but because you've learned to stay close enough to the source that his radiance flows through you effortlessly. The world sees your calm and calls it strength, but you know it's surrender. Being heaven's sign also means carrying stillness within chaos. The storms may still come, but they no longer move you, they move around you. The same peace that once felt like a gift has become your nature. You walk through turbulence untouched. Not because life is easy, but because your roots are in eternity. Jonah used to say, "I finally understood that miracles aren't interruptions of life. They are the rhythm of a life aligned with God." That's what you embody now. You've become the miracles someone else has been praying for. Heaven's next sign isn't in the sky, nor in the stars. It's in your eyes, in your steps, in your choices. You are the living evidence that God's promises still unfold, that faith still transforms, that light still wins. So, walk with quiet confidence. You no longer need confirmation because you carry revelation. You no longer chase blessings because you have become one. The same hand that once held you still guides you, but now it guides others through you. This is not the end of your story. It is the unveiling of your purpose. You are the sign heaven has released into the world, a torch lit by divine fire, burning, not to consume, but to guide. Move forward. Chosen one. The world doesn't need another miracle to appear. It needs you to remain one. And when you do, remember, you are no longer seeking the light at the end of the path. You are the light that reveals the path. Walk gently, shine quietly, and let every step become a testament that heaven still moves through human hearts. And so, the message completes its circle, from stillness to movement, from silence to song, from searching to becoming. You have walked the full arc of heaven's design. Every word you've received, every pause you've endured, has brought you to this moment of quiet illumination. You are not who you were when you began. You've grown into a living reflection of divine rhythm. Now, as this message settles in your spirit, take a breath of gratitude. You have listened deeply, and that is already worship. Yet, if these words have met you in the right moment, let them keep traveling. Let the light continue through you. Think of every like, share, and comment as a soft breeze that carries embers into new skies. Each one helps the message reach another soul standing in their own night. When you interact, you are not boosting a post, you are breathing life into light. If you wish to stay connected to this flow, you can subscribe, not out of habit, but as one returning to a familiar fire, adding another candle to the corridor of faith so others can find their way home. And if ever your heart whispers to donate, let it be gentle, joyful, free. Imagine your gift as a drop of oil, keeping the lamp from dimming fuel for words that keep lifting those who still wait in the dark. It is not transaction, it is participation in something eternal. So, go now. Carry this calm with you. Let your kindness, your interaction, your quiet generosity be sparks flung into the world. Unseen, yet unstoppable. Every small act keeps the flame alive. And through you, heaven's light will keep finding hearts that need to see again.